Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the March 6th, 2025 Planning Board meeting. First item on tonight's agenda, we do have a public hearing at 6:30. I just want to jump ahead. It's 330, 340 East Broadway, a minor subdivision. So even though that's shown first on the agenda of tonight, it's actually going to be at 6:30. We will move up to the board seats behind us to conduct that public hearing. And I'll go over the rules of the hearing if there's anybody here from the public, but I don't really see anybody here from the public. So we'll do that again at 6:30. First item tonight is to approve the February 13th draft minutes. Anybody,
I'll make a motion to approve.
anybody comments, anyone? Okay,
I'll second the motion.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's 3-0. Yeah. Next planning board meeting is scheduled for April 10th. I will not be at the meeting. I'm going to be absent that night. We had a discussion tonight, and we're going to actually put it in the minutes that we're going to appoint Lee Rosner, who's not here tonight, chair for that meeting.
That'll teach him.
That'll teach him to miss a meeting. Okay. And next is the steep slope code. So Andy, I guess you want to talk about that, right? You want to come up? Grab a mic. Give him and Tom.
I don't know if you have in your folder my analysis of the steep. Did you send that out? So just
I had it, but I
to
didn't bring it.
just to bring us around, the administration had asked me to take a look and asked Tom to take a look at a steep code ordinance. We reviewed. Tom is familiar with the Northport Code. We pulled up a couple of other codes to compare them to our village code. The village of Port Jefferson does not have a steep slope ordinance. What we do have is under our Environmental Quality Review, Chapter 129, we do have a requirement that says that any action that has slopes 20% or greater over 30% of the lot would be a type 1 action. And triggering something as a type 1 action, gives the planning board all the leverage it needs to do a hard look and a detailed analysis. Other codes, and Tom could speak to Northport's code, they have a more detailed approach. If you have certain slopes that are, let's just say, considered steep slopes, Northport requires you to shrink your building envelope or increase your lot size, depending on if it's a subdivision or a site plan, in order to protect a steep slope.
Yeah, part of this is the way Northport views this is to help with mitigation of flood. Obviously you've had some issues down here in the town, the village, so that's important. The environmental concerns, neighboring properties that may be impacted by it, landscape, things like that. So they give the right to the planning board based upon the percentage of slope, the size of the property, a range of what they are to reduce the percent of lot occupied or lot coverage, which makes sense because in a steep slope or in the hillside, the way Northport views it, building into those areas will require significant amount of, whether it could be cut and fill to, again, impact the neighboring properties, things like that. So they want to kind of minimize all that and shrink that down. I think it's pretty well written in the way they do it and the way they determine what is a steep slope. They're very specific about how you calculate it. And, it can get very technical, and I don't want to get down into the weeds on that too much, but I think it's an important code, particularly with this village, with the topography that you do have here. Matches pretty much Northport, if not, I think, is more severe. And they've addressed it and they've used the town of Huntington as a collaborative effort to put together that code, because Huntington has it as well.
So a lot of the codes, Huntington, Smithtown, Northport, they're using a similar approach. I failed to mention that we also have what triggers a type 1 action is the construction of a retaining wall of 6 feet, one or more retaining walls with a total of 6 feet or more is a type 1 action. Also giving the board the trigger. when I looked at other municipalities and their guidelines for steep slopes, I was very familiar with the Pine Barrens, Central Pine Barrens Commission, and their approach to steep slopes. They classify anything over 10% as a steep slope, and then they require a steep slope analysis, which breaks down a site by 0 to 10, 11 to 15, 15 or greater. So then you get a plan that shows you where the steep slopes are, and then they work with the applicant to avoid construction on the steep slopes. So they don't necessarily shrink building envelopes or increase, they just work with the applicant to move the map around. And in the report, we'll forward this to you, there are different ways that everybody looks at steep slopes. My conclusion, and Tom can jump in, is that I think the Village of Port Jefferson, through our Chapter 129 and SECRA, gives us all the latitude we need to request of an applicant or have the applicant provide details or maps or anything that we would need that any of these other ordinances would require. What I do think, though, is that it's not sensitive enough to steep slopes. I think 20% is way beyond the best management practice for steep slopes. Usually, in today's day and age, best management practice is anything over 10% is considered a steep slope. So I would recommend back to the Board of Trustees, once you all have a chance to digest what Tom and I and Jim Burke have put together, I'm thinking of recommending back to the Board of Trustees to simply amend our seeker ordinance to include any slopes over 10%, over 30% of the lot would be a type 1 action and require a hard look. And this way we could do any of the other things that are recommended in the other codes, including shrinking building envelopes or increasing the size of lots if it's a subdivision or whatever the case may be. Secret gives you that latitude with your mitigations. So in a nutshell, just to let the board know, we are looking at a steep slope approach, whether or not it becomes a ordinance or just an amendment to what we have remains to be seen. But we're coming at it from two different approaches, and somewhere in the middle we'll have something for you.
Yeah.
So I think I'll ask Cindy to send out my memo that went to Tom and Jim, and you guys could see where we are as far as some of the thought process, and then we can continue this. I think the mayor would like the planning board to get involved in this and ultimately make a recommendation. Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, okay.
Anything else,
Yep,
Tom?
no, that's perfect. Any questions when you review it, obviously, we'll answer them.
All right, thanks. Okay, so we've got a public hearing at 6:30. The first item is Mather Hospital. I think we should get started, if you don't mind an interruption on Mather, because I don't think the hearing's going to last very long. Should be a relatively quick hearing. So we'll take a little pause from the Mather discussion, do the hearing, and then come back and keep the ball rolling. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, we've got, 18 minutes before we have to adjourn for the public hearing, so.
And, there was a pre-submission application with drawings. If you get the drawings up, I'd appreciate that. So Mather is filing two separate applications for the generator project. One is modifications to the generator building.
Okay.
That has been previously submitted. I'm going to request a little bit more information on that. They're modifying the existing generator building.
Mm-hmm.
And they're putting a penthouse on the top. I got a drawing here for you to see. And I don't know what the dimensions of it are, but it looks to me by a scale, it's gonna be 8 feet tall by about 6-7 feet wide by about 50 feet long. I think it's gonna be all louvers, because I don't have an elevation, they didn't submit an elevation, I'm gonna ask them to submit an elevation on that. I'd like to get a little bit more information on that to present to you. So,
That's the existing building that's being
this is the
modified?
existing building down here. It's the one with the, you drive down,
Yeah, maybe at some point you point it out on this when we get the site
the
plan.
site
up.
plan up.
Looks like you got louvers on three
It's,
sides.
right,
Yeah.
right. And, there's a concern with what the visual is, because that is an active drive aisle.
Right.
And the other part is noise mitigation as we're opening up
Okay.
this roof and we're putting in another generator. So I think it's important to understand all those parameters to make a cohesive assessment of what's going on there. And the other part of this is behind the building, They need a new fuel tank for this. I think part of the state regulations require the hospital to run for a certain time period on generators. And they have to have fuel on site, in that time frame to run it. So they basically need to increase it. What's in the ground now is no longer allowed. The Suffolk County Health Department Division of Pollution Control, you got to put it above grade. So I think it's a double wall system. I didn't get a specification or an elevation again on this. It's an 8,000 gallon tank roughly. It's about 19 feet long, 8 feet wide, 9 feet tall. The pollution control does require a secondary containment system of 110%. You're probably familiar with that. Yeah. I don't know if that's part of the double walled system or if they're creating something else around that. It's going to be on a slab. It's going to be raised and it's going to be above grade. So we'd like to get just a little bit more information on that. I'm going to request that. They have filed with Suffolk County and it might be beneficial to see those drawings. They are referenced with the drawings that they gave us. But if you could pan down.
And Tom, that was diesel.
Okay, right there.
That was diesel fuel you said, right?
Yeah, yeah.
For the new, generator.
So the shaded in area is the mechanical building. And that's where they're putting the penthouse. That's the drive aisle that comes through.
Yeah.
Okay. And then behind it, that little gray area back there, around that area is where they're looking to put the tank. Now there's old chiller plants and whatnot behind it. One document, photograph, all that. I started doing that today. I'll put together a report on that. But this is the pre-submission.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just get the dialogue going, what we're going to require, and then how we can go about approving this. But they do need it.
Okay.
Well, can you just point out where the helicopter pad is?
Helicopter pad right there,
That rectangle on it.
just north of that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So noise and visual view
Noise
of
and
it.
visual and some elevations. I'd like
key,
to see maybe
some
specification on the tank and exactly how tall that's going to be out of the grade and the impacts on that area back there.
Mhm.
I'm not overly concerned because it is really a mechanical area back there, but
How do they fill the tank?
there is a fill spigot there that they're putting in as well.
So do they have an idea of where those trucks are
They're
coming
all going to
from?
come
and
back
they're
in that
gonna-
back area.
I mean, do they have to, are they big? Like, they're just a regular looking?
It's going to be a
Oil truck?
full-size oil truck, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Why aren't they gas?
Generally, the natural gas ones, you need a couple things. You need high-pressure gas, which I don't know if we have that here. For
Yeah.
a generator this size, they're less efficient, about 20% less efficient, so you need a bigger motor.
Mm.
But the big part is the utilities can be interrupted. In the hospitals, you're not allowed to have interruptible service. So if now National Grid decides somebody else has a dire need of gas, they're going to cut you off. So that's why a lot of it's really why hospitals don't do it.
Any other questions?
So I'm
Okay.
going to go back to the applicant, request further information.
Sure.
And from there,
Yeah.
we'll get a full submission, and then we'll put together a report for you guys and analyze it and make some recommendations.
Yeah, like an actual elevation view maybe from the
Yeah,
parking lot would
that's
be
what I'm asking
nice. Yeah.
I want
You got
elevation
the
view from
photos,
parking lot,
but
and I
yeah.
want an elevation view from
Okay.
the roadway
Mhm.
showing those louvers and how they face the hospital.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. It was easy. And as I'm looking for the stenographer, she walked in. 6:18. Andy, are you doing 1:15? Do you feel like we could do 10 minutes and then break? Okay, why don't we do that? Good evening.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Okay, the applicants are proposing a minor modification and a renewal of an existing site plan. The subject property is located on West Broadway, and the street number is 115. We all know this building as the former McDonald's building. Just to give you a little bit of background on this project, the applicants have a valid CO that was issued in 1970 for a restaurant. There were several other COs that went along with some modifications to the building, and the last CO that was issued was August 30th, 2021, for interior alterations and exterior improvements for a restaurant, McDonald's restaurant. In the course of that review in the early 2000s, the site plan was determined to have 32 parking spaces required. There were a certain number of parking spaces provided on site. The deficit in the parking spaces was granted by the planning board through what I would call a proximity to adjacent municipal lots. Since that time, though, the section of the code that allows credit within 200 feet of a property was removed from the code, yet this application still maintains the credit. The applicant is currently trying to market the building for permitted uses in the zone. They came to us and we started looking at the parking credit. We could not find anything in the records that memorialized in writing the parking credit, yet we feel that the applicant was right in arguing that he still maintained the credit through his proper COs. What I wanted to do, though, was to find a way to rationalize in the 21st century what might have been approved in the past. Applicants are coming to us on vacant buildings with the belief that they have credit to municipal parking around, which no longer exists, and we want to memorialize something. So we have this parking stall demand reduction theory, this technique, where if the applicant has this credit, how can we make findings to rationalize that credit in today's day and age? In the staff report, we show you that we worked with the applicant, and the applicant can provide certain amenities on his site, and make minor modifications to the site plan in order to achieve some benefits that, number one, reduce the demand for parking, and number two, can free up parking stalls for other uses if our code is doing the proper enforcement. So the applicants are proposing to amend the site plan by adding a bicycle rack to the, what is that? Would be the northeast corner of the subject site. They would add a bike rack for 4 bicycles. The applicant is also proposing to add a quick pickup space where determined later on in building for a 15-minute quick pickup to lessen the amount of parking stalls that might be required on the site. They're also proposing to eliminate the row of parking that was originally along this right-of-way access here. You might recall that we had a application to amend the site plan to remove the freezer. That was withdrawn. That application showed, though, the parking along the side. Mr. Russo and the applicant now has agreed to eliminate that from the plan and take the credit in the surrounding area. And this makes this area much more usable without a row of parking along the side here. So that makes this practical and usable now. It's also noted through parking stall demand reduction that if you're within a bus shelter, that incentivizes people to take a bus to the site, and there's a bus shelter diagonally across from the site, right in front of the chamber building. So we're giving the applicant some credit for that. So the applicant comes to the table with the expectation that he has an approval with parking already forgiven. What we've done is we've just created findings that rationalizes that forgiveness. So really, we're not changing the plan much, with the exception of adding a couple of notes, which shows the parking stall rationale. One comment here, saving, and just adding this one little detail to the map. So we're not thinking that this is a major
And the other
amendment.
one up there.
This here?
No, the one in the front, it's with the bus to, right by her finger. That's the other
Oh,
one
yeah,
that
right. the other
talks about the
stops.
bus
Right.
stops.
Right.
And the parking.
Yeah.
And
village
the parking
parking.
that's around, and that's spelled out in the staff report. One comment we did get, we did refer to the fire marshals and the building inspectors as part of our regular routine, and the only comment we got back was that it says here that the proposed use is restaurant, non-medical, office, and retail, all permitted uses in the zone. I think the applicant was just trying to say that the changes that they make on this application would be applicable to any other permitted use in the zone, as long as that we're not changing the CO or we're not changing the use. Um, The building inspector asked if we could just leave this as restaurant and not the other uses. I don't think that changes the intent or the effect of moving forward. Any permitted use on this building would still take the parking requirement based on the size of the building, and it would still say they would have the credit, and we would still apply parking. So if it was an office use, parking demand would actually be less, but they would still have the amenities on site. If it was some other use,
Toy
another
store.
retail use or something, it would still have the same parking requirement. So essentially, the building determines the parking, and the building inspector just wanted to be one use for now. And the applicants, I believe, have a pizzeria or somebody in the wings looking to use this. So we would say this is restaurant to restaurant, and that would be fine. That's the only comment I think I have. So if you've had the chance to look at the staff report, I know it came late, we're kind of backed up. If you've had a chance, we are recommending an approval of this minor modification and a reauthorization of the site plan.
Okay. So the intent is pizza? Is that?
Eric
Is
J.
that-
Russo, Van Brunt, Jesuit, and Russo, with offices at 140 Main Street, Sayville, 11782, on behalf of the applicant. And the reason with me tonight is Eric Nicosia, who prepared the modifications to the site plan. The reason that we're here is because the applicant had first one application that was submitted last year, and it got through the review process, and there were other issues that were raised by the village relating to not only the parking, but environmental conditions and the easement and the gore strip that's there on the property. That application was withdrawn, and we went back to, and Eric was kind enough to prepare this, showing what you see in front of you tonight. The reason why I brought this up with our meetings with the mayor and also with Mr. Freeling earlier was because if the tenant hasn't finalized its agreement with the prospective tenant, which is a restaurant use, and the restaurant use proposed is a pizzatina. It's sort of like a high-end Italian takeout, sit-down eatery. They do need the freezer, which the other application was the one where it was removed. So that was on the plan for McDonald's. It remains on the plan. The reason that we went through the exercise with Mr. Freeling was because he was using his county plan that he has used successfully elsewhere to come up with the parking redemption calculations. And he received authorization by the village attorney, Mr. Moran, the mayor, and the board of trustees to follow that and go forward with it throughout the rest of the village. So when we reviewed all the sections of the village code under 250-30 for parking calculations, we wanted to ensure that if the transaction between our client, American Quartet, and the prospective tenant falls apart, and they now have to find, because it's already happened once, based on what was before you originally last September, if we had a problem and we had someone who wanted an office or someone who wanted a retail space, we didn't want to come back here and start revisiting all of the parking calculations. We wanted to be guaranteed with the number of spaces that were before you. So that's why it was placed on there to indicate the retail and the office use, non-medical office, not medical. If the application is going to be approved as to restaurant, I believe it's agreed between us and the planning division that we can shift it to office or retail as long as it's non-medical office. If that happened, I can't foresee that. I don't have any signed indication with the prospective tenant, and that's why we have it on the plan. We're in agreement with all the calculations. If one of the other types of tenants comes along and we don't have a need for the generator space, then we create another parking space there. So we have one plus parking space on the site plan if that's what winds up the desire of the prospective tenant and the landlord. We also looked into, because it came up, how did we get to those 5 spaces that were on the easterly side of the building? What we decided and what we found out, which I only confirmed this afternoon finally, because we learned that there was a easement that the water authority had, which ran along here on this particular site plan with a gore strip. The title company confirmed, and we discussed, that the gore strip is neither owned by the village, is neither owned by the water authority, it's neither owned by the 113 or the 115 property owners. It's sort of an enigma of the imagination that it's created and it's there, and that creates this additional 5 foot over here. The easement, I learned today, finally, which we thought was the water authority. I spoke with John Malazzo because I had sent him all the documents, and he called back this morning after researching it. The water authority does not own the easement. The water authority, according to the information we received this afternoon and confirmed, the water authority in 1970 transferred the easement to the village of Port Jefferson. And the village of Port Jefferson wound up owning the easement because there was a deed transaction. However, the deed was never recorded. That's what was confirmed with the title company today. And in 1995, the village of Port Jefferson transferred the easement that it owned, and the reason they had it was because the water authority and the village wanted to get back to Mill Creek to clean or take care of and maintain Mill Creek. However, in our discussions, we came to find out through Chuck Hamilton from A.M. Weber Associates, a former employee of the state, Mill Creek is not a wetlands, and it was determined by Chuck Hamilton no longer wetlands, so that eliminated another concern that the village had.
All right.
What would-
I'm sorry, but I need to interrupt because it's 6:30.
Okay,
Sorry to
I'll
stop you midstream, but
I'll sum it up right
Yeah.
now. The end
Okay.
result is this property is owned by 113 West Broadway Corp., who sold it in 2013 to 113 West Broadway LLC, Realty LLC. We're fine with the application if you approve it the way it is, and if the modification is there and we can just confirm, should we need to come back, we do change of use through them. I'm fine with that for the other 2 uses. And if you have any other questions of Eric, we can go from there.
yeah, we'll go with the questions right when we're done with the hearing.
Okay, but all of this is information that you do need.
Well, the current information you got today is very helpful.
You don't have any technical questions of Eric, because he does have a commitment at 7.
I just had a question about the exterior of the buildings and changes and general question.
Not interested.
Okay, this is a public hearing for 330, 340 East Broadway. Cindy, you want to read in the particulars on this one so we can get going?
330, 340 East Broadway, minor subdivision, application number PB 0704-24, location 330-340 East Broadway. Suffolk County tax map number is District 206, Section 9, Block 6, lots 21.2 and 22. Zoning is RB2 Residential District. The property owner is Apollo Revocable Trust. The applicant, Mark Lang. Contact Woodhull Expediting, care of Amy DeVito. Description is a proposed two-lot subdivision. The action is a public hearing. The applicant proposes to subdivide a single property into two separate conforming lots. Proposed lots are conforming to the minimum requirements for lots in an RB2 zone.
Thank you. Okay, so tonight we have Amy DeVito here. Amy, you'll need to get sworn in.
I do.
Okay.
Amy DeVito, Woodhull Expediting, with offices at 800 Veterans Memorial Highway, Hopog, New York. I apologize in advance. I'm losing my voice.
Oh, okay. So can we bring that plan up? Subdivision plan? If you give us just a brief summary of the application.
Sure.
There's no public present tonight. We'll check again before we close, but I do have a comment that was a written comment that came in, and we are going to keep the comment period open for 2 weeks, just in case we get any comments, people at home maybe, to actually bring them here to Village Hall or mail them here to the planning department. And after 2 weeks, we'll have all the public comment if there is any additional.
Okay.
Okay.
So, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We are proposing a two-lot subdivision of this property. The overall square footage, or rather acreage, is 2.88. So we are in zone RB2, which requires only 15,000 square feet per lot. We are providing 62,288 square feet for lot 1 and 63,193 square feet for lot 2. We exceed both lot width and lot depth. So as you can see, based on the plan and the comments I just made, this is a completely conforming subdivision, which is in complete harmony with the neighborhood and most certainly not out of character. We don't expect any variances at all once we get to the point of proposing a home on the property. There's more than enough room for us to meet all of the required setbacks and lot coverage. This is a minor subdivision. Again, we are more than conforming. As far as Suffolk County Health Department, we have two lots that are single and separate on the 1981 maps. So we're not going to need a subdivision with them, but we will need to apply for a permit for lot 2 to install a septic system when we get to the point where we're proposing a home. And I am happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Yeah, you've been here before, so we've seen this, so this is
Yes.
nothing new to us. What's on the second lot right now?
There is a garage, actually. It's
Okay.
just a little accessory building. Yeah. It's
It's a shed, and that'll be removed? Or,
I'm not really sure
Maybe.
yet. Yeah, as part of planning, they'll discuss that. They're most likely going to sell the lot, for somebody else to purchase and build on. So that person may elect to remove that accessory building if the board sees it fit to opine on the fact that it should be a condition for the subdivision. We're fine with that too. There's no requirement on our end to keep it.
right. Okay. I'm just going to read in the public comment that was received by email.
Sure.
It's kind of brief, so it's not, and then I'll give you, Jen, I'll give you a copy so you can,
Actually, Cindy gave me a copy, so I do have it.
okay. But I'll give Jen a copy so she can actually put it in the record of the,
Sure.
of the hearing. So this is from John Russell. I don't know where John lives, but is it on the back? Okay. He lives at 98 Sawtooth Cove in Port Jefferson. So he writes, it's actually addressed to the zoning board, but these are public comments, so it doesn't matter which board he's addressing it to. He's worried about the negative impacts this development will have on our community. And the reasons for opposition, as he phrases it, character alteration. Under that heading, the subdividing a lot changes the character or neighborhoods by reducing green space and increasing density with additional housing being built. Environmental impact, under that heading, Port Jefferson has a flooding problem. Further destruction of natural habitat replaced with concrete and asphalt will make this issue worse. The destruction of green space will also have a negative impact on wildlife by destroying their habitat. And the third item, traffic congestion. Every new housing development in Port Jefferson and surrounding areas adds to already congested roads, which is having a negative impact on our quality of life. Our area and Long Island in general is at a breaking point as traffic in certain areas is becoming, in quotes, city-like. With all the recently completed development and proposed future development, they all add up to make traffic congestion even worse. And then he summarizes by saying many of these new developments are driven by profit and greed with no regard to the negative impacts they will have on our beautiful village. I urge the Planning and Zoning Commission to carefully consider the potential harm this proposed zoning change would have on our community and reject the application. And that summarizes that comment. No one else has arrived from the public, so no questions from the board. So
Just one, if I could, just out of curiosity, I noticed on Thompson, there's a drain, and it looks like there's a drain just to the north of the south property line on the lot number 2. Is that something that'll be given to the village as an easement?
Are you talking about the drainage cover notated on the survey?
Not in the road, but just past it, there's a circle, like,
On our property, correct?
on your property,
I'm
correct?
not even entirely sure.
That area
Yeah,
floods?
we could give an easement for that, of course.
but-
I don't know what that service is, or I'm assuming, I guess, the road, but yeah.
Yeah, because
But yeah,
everything,
we
to the-
could
I've-
give an easement.
for 20, 30 years, I've been walking dogs by that, and it has always flooded in the past, and the village has tried to keep from flooding onto the property, and they built those 2 structures. So, I'm just, so it doesn't end up being a bigger mess. It might be something just to do ahead of time, once you're,
Yeah, we could
doing the
definitely do a
subdivision.
drainage easement for
Yeah.
that area, just so the village can obviously always have access to it if need
Right.
be. Yep, of course.
that's it from me.
okay. You get a motion to close the hearing?
I'll close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Eric, you want to come up? Oh, did I?
I did, yes.
Okay, we interrupted you, so you were wrapping up though.
I was wrapping up, and Mr. Freeling and I discussed the fact that if it should turn out that the prospective tenant is not the restaurant use, and that it is going to be a retail space or a non-medical office, we could address it by simply filing for a building permit with a change of use, and then address it accordingly, going from restaurant to non-medical office, et cetera. We don't have to come back before you. And according to Eric, he did disclose to his knowledge, and also according to our client, there are no outside building modifications
Oh,
at this
good.
time.
Okay.
So the site signage would just simply be changed with the new name. And we're waiting to hear back from the real estate agent, which happens to be through the Gito agency. So hopefully we'll
Okay.
have somebody.
All right. Yeah. Actually, you had pointed out some of the positive
Oh,
things.
The other thing had to do with the ownership of the property.
Yes.
And clearly, they did not give me, what I had received from the Water Authority, from John Malazzo. I have it in my other file. If you give me 1 second, I have it. This is what I received from John Malazzo earlier today, which doesn't take you completely there, but you can take a look at it. I brought copies of it just in case it came up.
Yeah. This is the documentation
This
of what
is-
you were talking about.
This
the
is what
easement.
John Malazzo was able to give us,
Mhm.
and it simply indicated to the village attorney at the time in 1970 that with the request of August 6th, original document, the incorporated village as an easement over the rear and located to the creek. And then he puts a copy of the easement, which, although it has a legal department number up there and has a description, it's indicating the Water Authority, with principals offices in Oakdale, provides to the village of Port Jefferson the easement. And it's talking about the privilege to enter upon and over the property, and gives it to the village. Now, subsequent to that, and I don't have any other documentation, the attachment that he gave shows the easement area on the property, which the document is also dated 1970 of July. Then I sent this back to the title company, Safe Harbor, who had done the search for us as we were trying to figure out who owned what, who owned the gore, how did the gore come into existence, et cetera. And I provided that to Andrew earlier. And then tonight, when I called the title company called back at around 10 to 5, that's when they indicated that this happened in 1970 to the village. Then it was ultimately sold to the village some around 1995, according to but there's no deed recorded. And then from there, it went from the village to 113 West Broadway Corp. in 1995. And then from 113 West Broadway Corp., it went to the 113 West Broadway Realty LLC in 2013. So that's who owns it now. And that would conform to the survey that we provided, which showed the property line and the gate and the guardrail. And we had discussion probably 3 weeks ago with Deirdre Ryan and Mr. Freeling and I, and the village has no control over fences or guardrails. You don't need a permit. They couldn't take it down. We thought the Water Authority had to take it down or request that it be taken down on their easement. That's what prompted me to go to Malazzo, and then Malazzo went through the records and came back and said, we don't own it anymore. It went the way of the property owner, which confirmed everything that we had for the tax bills, that 113 West Broadway Realty now owns it and how they got it. So that's the missing piece. Other than that, if you have no objection to the plan in front of you with the conditional modification and knowing we don't have to come back here unless we have a conditional special permit use, which we're not planning on going on, I think we're fine.
Okay.
If you approve it the way it is, so we can go forward with our rental.
Okay.
And I was told we don't need a public hearing. This could be done through work session.
That's correct. Okay, one thing I wanted to mention too, in the comprehensive plan, 2030 comprehensive plan that the village adopted, or was adopted.
2030? Oh,
It was it was done in, I think adopted in 2013. Yeah. There is a statement in there talking about vacancies in this zoning area, and that if a in order to facilitate reoccupation of buildings that maybe are unoccupied and vacant, if someone comes in with a similar use to the same site with no alterations, then that's a desirable thing to get the process moving and to get the buildings occupied and businesses, or it's kind of vague. It doesn't talk about specific uses, but whatever business was in there, I mean, most of it's retail, but you know, there are a lot of restaurants as well. The idea is let's get people to come back in, another tenant to come in, another owner to come in and
Right.
redevelop the building.
But, and that allows for any one of the respective uses that we're talking about.
That's-
Retail, office, et cetera.
That's
Because
another
part of the
justification.
dialogue that we were having, but we got past it, was they were trying to suggest or intimate that the use, the CO for the building had expired or lapsed. And I at least shared the case law and my point. COs run with the land, uses run with the land. Yes, I recognize what your code says, that they look and see that it's got a vacant space and a vacant window and they want to revoke the CO. And we worked through that and we came to agree. The use was the use, it remains. So I wasn't giving, I can have this. So that's fine. But this would be in keeping with what we're trying to do.
And did we get fire marshal comments on this one?
You did, I thought you indicated you heard.
We
from-
did, and the only comment that we got from both the fire marshal and the building inspector was if we could amend this one
Oh, the-
proposed use to restaurant and take out the non-medical office and retail. I think it goes without saying that a permitted use, everything from this point forward requires building permit, building inspector, things like that.
Right.
So all applications would go to the building department, and if there is some sort of change in the use that's not a permitted use, or if there's outsource modification or anything like that, that would be addressed at that time.
Okay.
With the
But
building
at this moment, it's the plan and hope to go forward with it as a restaurant. So I don't think we need to get a building permit to do it because they're not planning any interior alterations.
Well, okay.
At least that's what I've been told.
Yeah.
But I don't represent the tenant.
Pizza place, they're
Yeah, you would,
pizza ovens.
I don't
Significant.
represent the tenant. I don't have the answer. All I know is, and I don't, in the original application, they were eliminating the generator. Now the generator is remaining.
Yeah.
I know that the building inspector was by the site earlier today
Yes.
because he saw people that were there, but that was the landlord and their crew cleaning it out because they want to get ready for prospective tenants or possible new tenants, whoever they may be, if this one doesn't move forward, because I know he was checking his finances. But that's where we are.
it's the bad luck of the applicant to have a building right next door to Village Hall, so we see everything that's
There
going
you
on.
go.
As soon as the cleaning crew went in, fire marshal called our building inspector, we went over there to take a look.
But the good luck is when you have a meeting and it's
Yeah.
after
We need-
dinner,
There you go.
where before you get a hamburger and come here with a hamburger and a soda because you didn't have time to eat dinner before the meeting, you can now grab a slice of pizza.
Sounds like you're speaking from some experience.
I can't speak to that. If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to address them. It's a pleasure to
Other
be before you
questions
again.
here? Other questions? Anyone else? No? Okay.
All right,
Wow.
thank you.
Okay.
See, very simple. Have a good evening, and I wish you all the
Okay.
best.
Same here. Motion to adjourn? Else? Anybody has something else?
Oh, we're done with Mather?
Yeah.
Okay. I would just like to propose, you know, when I had the store uptown, that credit for parking if you were within 200 feet of municipal lot really helped other retail stores when they came in. And a lot of them still remain empty up there, you know, one of the hurdles is parking. I really wish the village would revisit that. Because if you go back to, if you go down Linden and you go back to the parking lots over there, they're empty. You know, what a shame.
Yes.
So I think that it would help.
I think we're on the same page. Parker, do you don't by any chance have the radius for the proximity rule? So we did have a 200-foot rule that if you were within 200 feet of a municipal lot, some applicants come in and say, well, I still have that credit, but that's not in the code. So working through this particular application, I said to them, well, look, you might have had the credit, but your building has been vacant. A lot of that credit has been absorbed by other uses, the growth of the village, new apartments, new retail, whatever. I can't give you 100% credit for what you once had years ago. So what we did was we said, well, how do we have a formula for the loss of credit? So we came up with this proximity rule. If you were within 200 feet, like the old rule, we'd give you a 50% credit on your parking shortfall. If you were between 200 feet and 500 feet, we would give you a 30% credit on your parking. If you were within 500 feet and the length of a ideal TOD, which is a quarter mile, which is what, 1,300 feet, I think, somewhere around there. If you were within 500 to 1,300 feet, we'd give you a 20% credit. So this particular application was within 200 feet of several municipal lots, so we gave them the 50% credit. It works out that giving them a 50% credit and adding 3 parking stall demand reductions zeroes out their shortfall. So we make findings that rationalizes what was given to them long ago, what they feel they still have, and what they can have now if they make these minor amendments to the site plan. And to that point, I don't know if you want to reapprove the site plan with these amendments, or how do we
Wait, can I ask
memorialize
a
these
quick
changes?
Question, what you just described with this, that's now codified?
It is not in our code, but we have permission to use that to work with applicants to get.
But aren't we just setting up something, 20 years down the line, someone can look at this and go, well, none of that was codified? Because that's what we're basically saying.
I would
We're
like to see
coming up
it
with
back in the code.
rationalizations right now, which are great, not denigrating those at all.
Mhm.
But unless we codify it,
Somebody
we're
can come up with
actually creating just the potential to just kicking this down the road again.
So at
So
the-
I think we should definitely, I kind of second your idea. I like what you've described, but
But let's
should
get in the
be-
code, yeah.
yeah.
At the last Board of Trustee meeting, the village attorney indicated that it did not need to be codified, but I think after, I think we can move forward with everything, but we are working to codify it. So
Okay.
that'll be on the trustee work session agenda, and they'll talk about it. Probably by the end of the month, we might have a code amendment that would add that to it.
Thank you.
All right, good. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Motion
Wait,
to
are we
adjourn.
gonna-
Oh, do you want to amend,
Yeah.
to amend this map, correct? With the,
Oh.
with the bubble diagram,
Right.
the bubble diagram, and we just wanted to make the proposed use restaurant by
Yes.
eliminating non-medical in office.
Yes.
I started drafting a resolution which would say that. I'm sorry, I ran out of time, I didn't finish it. I
Mhm.
don't know if you want to make a resolution and we'll write it up for you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it would be, I guess it would be a resolution to, just approve the map as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve the map as amended and discussed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Did we vote to adjourn?
Not yet.
No, not
Oh,
yet.
okay.
We made the motion, but we didn't get a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay,
Aye.
thank you.
Gil, you made the motion, Barbie seconded, right?
I made the motion.
Oh, you made the
and-
motion.
Yeah.
Well, to adjourn.
Oh, to adjourn, yes, I'm
made a
sorry.
motion.
It was-
On the amendment?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I said